Hello and welcome. I am so excited today that we have Marissa Moss with us. And Marissa has an amazing new book that I hope everyone noticed called Boardwalk Babies. Marissa, tell us about Boardwalk Babies. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
You
that
are
one is
so,
stunning. I mean, April Chu does a magnificent job with this. And this is, I like to do picture book biographies about people I feel like you should know, but don't, people who should be famous but aren't. And Martin Cooney is one of those people because he was the one who got hospitals to adopt incubators for premature infants. And he did it in the most outrageous, ridiculous way by having a sideshow at Coney Island after having incubator babies in world fairs around the globe to try to drum up interest in this new technology that the medical establishment was dismissing. And this is a time when premature babies were basically had no care, which is shocking to us now to think about. But they would give up on them. And I felt like he didn't give up on these babies and I didn't want to give up either.
so I want to know, how did you find out about Martin Cooney? I mean, I saw in your references in the back that there was an NPR story in like 2015. Was that where you learned about
That
it?
was
Or
basically what started it and what sparked it. Because it's very hard to read about him because he's not part of historical literature. Where I learned about him was medical literature, which is bizarre. But after he was accepted, and I put one of those in the bibliography, I didn't want to put a bunch of medical articles because that would be more than what teachers want to look at. But that's where where you see this real bones of the story. And this is a time when this is, the turn of the century, when medicine is still more exploratory, I guess. It's not the Middle Ages when you were doing leeches, but there weren't the same kind of standards, I guess. So that he could have this hospital. It was basically a hospital for premature infants in Coney Island with nurses and incredible care and formula. And so the information was through medical articles, which is the first time I've ever done that in a book.
wow. So your research was primarily through medical journals. Did you get to go to Berlin or anything fun like that? Or
No. And most of it would be going to Coney Island for that matter, because
there
most
you
of
go.
it happened at Coney Island. And I do often travel to do research for these kind of things. And there's a marker for him at Coney Island because
That's lovely.
yeah, they have a historical marker because this mattered. I mean, because of him, for decades, he had these babies.
6,500 babies.
And these children overwhelmingly survived. This is when people would give up on babies that weighed 2 pounds. His survived, and his own daughter was a premature infant. And that just really touched me, that she ends up in the exhibit and then grows up to become a nurse caring for other babies like her. This is one of those stories where you feel like truth is always better than fiction. You can't make it up.
When I got to that point in the book, I literally got chills because it was just such a wonderful, oh my goodness, of course. Yeah. And it's knowing that you're in the right place at the right time doing what you're supposed to be doing. Dr. Cooney.
And that you don't give up, and that you basically speak up for those who can't speak up. These babies couldn't speak up. And
right.
Their parents, he took people, it didn't matter, you didn't have to pay. So people came from all over to bring their babies to him once it became known that this existed, because people were desperate. Their own doctors would give up and say, we've heard about this place in Coney Island, take your baby there. Because there was nothing for them. And so he took babies from all different backgrounds, didn't matter. And April has a lovely, I have to show this page, where she has these babies,
the farmer,
all their little good luck charms that the parents would leave them with because they wanted them to survive. This gorgeous art.
I love that. Yeah, the little garlic.
And
amulet. And yeah, it's just amazing. And let's talk a little bit about his showmanship, because that's not a combination you would think to look for. A medical doctor with this creativity and an amazing showman. So yes. I love the story about him putting a diamond ring, on to show on the baby's wrist, show how tiny it is. I mean,
he was very, very clever. And the fact that when he first was tasked, he wasn't the person who invented the incubator. It was a French doctor who gave him the task to go set up an exhibit of these incubators. And he realized they would not be a big draw without babies. And that's really his first act of showmanship, to go to a hospital and say, will you give me your premature babies? And he thought, like, of course they're gonna say no. Why would they let me have little infants? And they said, go ahead, take them. We can't do anything with them anyway. And that was his first act of absolute brilliance, because who can resist a baby?
Yeah,
I can't.
See the tiny babies. I mean, I'm there. So no, it's just an amazing, amazing story. And you have such a history of finding these unsung heroes and heroines of the past and bringing their stories to light. This one's a little bit different for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is different because I like those forgotten stories. In general, those tend to be
Mhm.
women and minorities because history is written by white men. And this is my first white man, which is out of the norm for me. I don't normally do white men, but he himself was on the edge. He was on the fringe because he was doing things the general medical community wasn't. And the fact that he would step in and fight for these little babies who are from all different backgrounds,
Right,
that
exactly.
drives me. That's what drives me to write this story, to tell this story. And April Chu, who did the art, she had, her daughter was a young child at the time. And so it took a lot longer to do this book because she was basically doing it with almost a baby in her lap. And I thought that's
Oh,
appropriate.
wow.
We make room for babies in this book.
Making room for babies is what it's all about. Okay, I love the end papers. I think I need you to show the end papers because how much fun is that?
Okay, well, I'm glad you love the end papers because I wanted these end papers because I thought they showed, to me, it's the humor of that he's showing little babies by sideshow acts. And what a sideshow act then was, you know, the bearded lady and the fire swallower and all these things. And that little premature babies would be shown along with this seems to me so hilarious. And I think kids would get that, you know, that joke. I have to say we have gotten criticized in reviews for these end papers because they're seen as not politically correct.
Mm.
And I feel like, well, maybe they are politically correct because people who were in these sideshows, this was the life they chose. They were proud of it. And this wasn't always people who were, the idea that people would gawk at freaks, okay, that's something that we're now uncomfortable with. But a lot of these were performers, and this was a proud lifestyle for them. And I wondered if I should now have in the next edition, have a add to the author's note that this is something that was considered a spectacle, but it's like circus performers, that this was, or magicians. We wouldn't consider this, if you're a circus performer, that you're somehow less than human. These people consider themselves fully human,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they made a living, and they had a proud community. So that's my pitch for the end papers, which I think kids will get. Maybe some adults don't get them, but we're living in very sensitive times. So
We are, and that's not a terrible thing, but I do think that it'll be something that will draw in kids. There's some kids who may that may be their way into the book is by enjoying the end papers, seeing it over someone's shoulder, and then going, "Oh, yeah,
what's
I
that
want to know
about?
more about that."
Yeah.
So never underestimate the power of a good end paper.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Are there ways that have presented themselves to you that teachers and librarians can use this book with kids or maybe some have told you this is something they're doing as a writing
I
prompt
haven't,
or
because this book came out, you know, in the spring of the pandemic. So
right? Yeah.
it's been really hard to get teacher
Well, what would
feedback.
you suggest to them?
But we do have a curriculum guide,
Great.
and a lot of it is about the idea of wacko weirdo inventions that you would never think would work, and inviting kids to think of what would be the problem they would want to solve, because this problem Cooney was solving wasn't that how to keep the premature babies alive. He knew the incubators could. The problem he was solving was how to convince hospitals to use an incubator. And how did he do it? By this crazy sideshow idea. So that's kind of where I'm asking kids to be creative. How do you pick a problem to solve? And that's what the curriculum guide invites kids to do. And how would you do it? And it isn't always the predictable way you think would work. Like just knocking on doctors' doors didn't work. Having an exhibit where people could see that these babies were taken care of and thrived. And these babies grew up and came back on Father's Day to thank Dr. Cooney for saving their lives, which is, I think, very touching.
Again, we're recording this right before Father's Day, so thank you, Dr. Cooney.
All of them, yes, he is like a father to all of them.
That's wonderful.
You know,
Well, thank you so much.
That was a family endeavor that he did it. His wife was a nurse, and that his daughter was also a nurse. It was just really the whole family was in it for the babies.
In it for the babies. That is a beautiful thought. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today about Boardwalk Babies, Marissa Moss. And thank you so much for all the fantastic picture book biographies, all the books you do. But I have to say the picture book biographies have a special place in my heart. And I hope you'll have it, everyone will have a chance to check this book out for themselves. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you. I have a passion for this kind of history because I think this is the kind of history that engages kids and draws them in. It's not just names and dates, it's not battles, it's people making a difference. And that inspires kids to feel like they can make a difference. And that's a big job for history to do.
Right. Beautifully said.